Because right now, at all levels of government, if anyone with a conflict of interest couldn't vote, they'd all have to go home. I mean, there's such rampant conflict of interest in Florida that we need to begin to define what is a conflict and examine what other states are doing and draw the lines appropriately. I would say if someone has insider information and they can make money off of a piece of property and it's based on knowledge that others outside the process don't have, I think that's crossing the line. Right now, our public officials at the state level can receive income from lobbying firms, and if they have a conflict, they disclose it 15 days after the vote. At the local level, at least disclosure happens before the vote, and at least in many cases, at least there's recusal. But we have to have a full, it's going to take a full report just to examine the massive amounts of conflicts of interest in our state and to draw the lines on what's appropriate and what's not.
I want to ask you one other question about residency. This seems to be another issue. Somebody from Georgia, for example, could run for office here in Tallahassee and have a whole campaign, move up here the day of the election and be qualified to hold office here. What do you think about that situation and the fact that the Florida election code has absolutely no definition of residency like other states do?
Well, this is qualifying week in Florida. By Friday, candidates have to file. In many localities, you have to have a established residency for a year in some cases. At the state level, we ought to look at that and see. I mean, we certainly have requirements if you want to run for governor. I believe it's 7 years you have to establish residency before running for governor. Is that correct? So, I mean, for other offices, I would think that would be a reasonable area to look at. You ought to live in the community that you want to represent.
You said that you talked about the main problem being at the local level, but it's at the state level that a lot of this stuff is going to have to get fixed. A lot of these recommendations have been the subject of bills that have gone nowhere over the last few years. I mean, what has to change as far as that? Because the legislature hasn't really been interested in exactly these kinds of changes. So, I mean, do you think that your organization, your report is, going to move the ball a little bit? Because it doesn't look like there's any appetite for this right now.
I think 2013 will be the year we see ethics reform finally happen in Florida. I want to thank Marilyn Wills, our board member, who's a former head of the League of Women Voters of Florida, who's here with us. Ben Wilcox, who's a consultant to the League of Women Voters and is our research director, co-writer on this report, and also Phil Claypool, the former executive director of the Florida Commission on Ethics, who contributed to our report. The time has come for ethics reform in Florida. We can no longer stand for corruption at the levels we have in our state. Corruption is a jobs killer. Corruption threatens our economy, threatens our ability to attract jobs and capital to the state. And thankfully, we have a governor who ran on ethics reform. On his very first day in office, Governor Scott pledged to pursue ethics reform, to implement recommendations from past reports. We've had 3 senior level meetings with the Scott administration, and we're hopeful as a result of those meetings that this will be the year in 2013 that ethics reform gets accomplished. We also have the opportunity that Tea Party groups and the League of Women Voters, and Republicans, Democrats, Independents are all coming together and saying we all agree that corruption is a problem and we can't stand for it anymore, and ethics reform is the solution. So that we had the broadest possible coalition coming together in support of ethics reform for 2013. We have the latest research. We have strong grassroots, and we believe that ethics reform will be accomplished in the 2013 legislative session.
You've got the self-initiation issue that's been out there forever, but there's also been concerns raised that when the Ethics Commission does act, that the penalties are so minimal that it doesn't, and they rely on precedent, they rely on whatever. And is there anything in your report that talks about giving them a bigger hammer to?
Yes. We've recommended an increase in the penalty threshold to $25,000 for the cases of the most blatant ethics law violations. We believe $25,000 is an appropriate penalty. That hurts just about anybody if you violate an ethics law and receive a $25,000 penalty. So giving the Ethics Commission that tool, the ability to move up to that level, beyond where precedent has kept them at a much lower level for most fines. They're usually around $1,000. $25,000 fine should be the right number for major ethics law violations.
But those are only effective if you can collect them, and they already have a problem collecting the fines now. So what do we do to solve that issue?
Well, the Ethics Commission staff actually does a really good job with financial disclosure reports that come in. They have a 99% success rate, and they collect just about every fine that they put out there. But there are a small number of folks that don't pay their fines. So what we need to look at, we'd like to see the legislature look at, how about if they work for government still, let's garnish wages until the fine is paid. Let's look at if somebody has an automobile or other personal property, let's put a lien on that property. Senator Storms had a bill last session that sought to do that. We believe it will be in the Florida Commission on Ethics package again this year as they set that agenda on June 15th. And we'll be supportive of that move. We have to collect the ethics fines.
What about running for office again if you have an outstanding fine? I mean, certainly I haven't actually looked at it, but there could be people qualifying this week that have outstanding fines. I mean, is that something that you look at as well?
We're going to do another report upcoming on the Florida Elections Commission as well, and these are separate. There's a Florida Elections Commission and a Florida Ethics Commission. Both have fines. What we might do in that report is consider, should we add a past ethics fine that is still owed to the qualifying fee the next time a candidate runs for office. I mean, it seems like you shouldn't be able to qualify again as a candidate for office and pay a qualifying fee while you have an outstanding balance for an ethics or elections law violation.
Or should you even hold office at all? I mean, a perfect example, we have a commissioner here in Leon County, Bill Proctor, he's owed like $80,000 in an ethics fine for years, hasn't paid a dime of it, and yet he's still a commissioner. Do you think that's right?
The fine for that commissioner and others that owe it and are receiving a government paycheck, we should be garnishing their wages until the fine is paid off.
Ben, can someone talk about the methodology of the survey? You're talking about federal public corruption convictions. Who's making those convictions, and how does that work? I mean, where are these numbers coming from specifically?
So a recent case out of Hillsborough County Commissioner Kevin White was convicted by a federal court. He was prosecuted by the U.S. Department of Justice, and that's where a federal public corruption conviction comes from. Now that case itself won't appear until we receive the data for 2012. But these are federal courts, federal prosecutions, federal convictions for the data that we're looking at today.
These are investigations that are initiated by the FBI and by the Department of Justice.
Exactly.
You guys have any thoughts on the ongoing dispute between the Scott administration and the DOJ on the voter registration rolls? What do you think about that, about people that may or may not be here illegally and going through those rolls?
You or Marilyn want to comment on that from the legal and voters?
Yeah, I mean, that really kind of a different, I'd put on a different hat for that. I wouldn't be speaking for integrity for
Or Marilyn's here if you want to talk with her after the meeting,
Yeah.
get a legal women voters perspective. Any other questions? Thank you all.